In this video, I'm going to give you some additional tips on starting the dry start method. Check it out. This channel is all about aquariums, so if you want to learn more about aquariums or discuss aquariums and you're new here, hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you'll be notified when I make new videos or live stream. And of course, if you're one of my awesome subscribers, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment down below and share it where you can. So I made a video a while ago about the dry start method, and if you have not seen that video, the video is right here. It's a guide on how to use the dry start method to create a nice lush carpet for your aquarium. But of course, like all videos, there's always some information I might have left out, might have forgotten, or some information or question that you guys might have asked. So I'm going to try to cover them here in this video. So let's get to it, shall we? So tip number one, research the light that you're going to be using. A lot of times when you use the dry start method, you're trying to create a lush carpet before you start flooding the tank. And of course, some of these plants that you use to make that lush carpet are high demanding light plants. Not all plants out there are high demanding in light, but the ones we do normally use or that's very popular in the hobby requires that. Not to mention, you got to get that light reaching to the substrate level from the height of your tank. So doing the research on the lighting is very important, especially for the size of the tank you have and the type of plants you're going to grow. Also, don't forget that once you flood your tank, that light intensity diminishes. That to say, without water, the light intensity reaches the substrate much easier than if there was something in the middle, for instance, water or a tank cover. So it's vitally important that you do research to understand the lighting that you're going to be using, so once you flood your tank, you're still going to get enough of that PAR rating hitting that substrate. Now I mentioned PAR rating, and I will go over that in a later video, but basically PAR rating is the measurement that we basically use as best as we can to measure the intensity of the light hitting a plant. So lighting is important in the case of using the dry start method as well as growing the carpet plant that you're trying to grow. So try not to overlook that. Tip number two, during the dry start method, leave your lights on for 10 to 12 hours. When you are using the dry start method, you don't have to worry too much about algae, so you can leave your lights on longer. And of course, leaving your lights on longer means that your plants have a longer time to grow, which makes this method really desirable because you'll be able to grow a carpet faster. So don't worry too much about leaving on the lights too long, because you got to remember, no algae in this stage because there's no water to worry about, so you'll be able to grow those plants. And again, going back to tip number one, make sure you do that research on that lighting so you have enough lighting to grow those plants. Tip number three, you have to cover up your tank. You want to cover your tank up because you want to build that humidity inside that tank during the dry start method. Basically, that's how you keep your plants watered. Now, you keep the humidity tank by spraying water or misting water into the tank every day or as needed. In that case, you have to use your judgment, making sure your plants are always damp and moist so that it gets enough water. And don't forget to leave a small gap on top of your tank so that you get that air and atmospheric exchange. It also helps the exchange of oxygen and CO2 inside your tank so that your tanks can breathe the CO2. Tip number four, saturate the substrate, don't flood it. Sometimes I see pictures and videos of people doing the dry start method, and what they do is they put too much water in the substrate level. You don't want to do that. You don't want to create pools of water on the substrate where there's standing water. You just want to damp the substrate. It's like damping a towel. Too much water can cause fungus growth. So remember that. Saturate, don't puddle. Number five, use nutrient-rich substrate. When I say nutrient-rich, I'm talking about ADA aqua soil or just regular potting soil. Now this type of substrate is already loaded with all the macromedias and the micromedias needed for plants to grow. Do you need to? No. You could use inert substrate, and I will cover that in the next tip, but this makes things so much easier for you. Sure, ADA aqua soil is a little more expensive. Using soil can be a little dirty to some people, but it just makes things much smoother as you move along. Tip number six, if you're using inert substrate, then dose your water that you're going to be misting your tank with. Since inert substrates don't have the nutrients to help your plants grow and strive, you're going to have to give it nutrients some other way. So just use an all-in-one fertilizer and dose it to the amount of water in the container, and just use it to spray your plants or tank every day or whatever is needed. And you're good. Tip number seven, in an unfortunate event that you do have mold or fungus growing in your aquarium during the dry start method, you could actually eradicate it. You could simply eradicate that by using hydrogen peroxide, 1 part hydrogen peroxide and 4 parts water, or you can use the ever popular Excel. And that should help get rid of fungus and mold. And of course, to get rid of fungus and mold is not to give it an environment where it's going to grow in the first place. See tip number 3 and 4. Tip number 8, you might get dieback from the plants that you're using as carpet. It might happen because the plant you got might have been grown submersed, and when you got it, you're trying to grow it immersed now. It works the other way as well. So if you notice a little dieback, just watch it very carefully. It should grow back in over time. So basically this tip is just to say don't panic. It might happen. Tip number 9, check out other plants that can be grown immersed. Listen, you're already using the dry start method to grow the plants quickly before you flood the tank. So it's a good opportunity to find out if the plants that you're planning to plant in the tank when it's flooded can be grown immersed. If they can, then it's the perfect time to might as well just go ahead and grow it immersed. Tip number 10, go longer if you have to. In that dry start method video, I say that you want to go around 6 to 7 weeks before you flood your tank, and if you read on the internet, it says about the same thing. That timeline is actually based on people's experience of how long it will grow a full, lush carpet in your tank. However, that's not always the case. It really depends on your setup as well as where you are, the humidity in the air, etc., etc. So there's nothing to say that you can't go any longer. And of course, there's nothing to say that you can't go any shorter either. If you're comfortable with where your carpet has grown so far and you're ready to flood the tank, then go ahead and do so. Now, when I use the dry start method, I like to make sure that I have a full carpet. That means all the holes are plugged up and grown in. So sometimes that requires me to actually go a little longer than 6 to 7 weeks. Sometimes I might go to 9 to 10 weeks, maybe even longer. The whole point here is that there is actually no real time limit, only that what you're comfortable with what you're seeing that's going on in your tank. So it's not a hard, fast rule, okay? Just use your best judgment. And tip number 11, patience, patience, patience. Like everything in this hobby, it requires patience, and the dry start method is no exception. For a lot of people, this is one of the biggest problems they have, is waiting for that carpet to grow in. But remember, you're doing the dry start method, or you're using the dry start method for that exact reason. So if you're already using this method, then don't rush it. You're going to have to be patient. And if you're not a patient type of person, this might not be the way for you. Don't mess with it. Let it grow in and enjoy the journey. Now, those are some tips about using and starting the dry start method. In a future video, we're going to go over some tips about what to do after you have flooded your tank. So if you're curious about that video and you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you know when that video is out. To my awesome already subscribers, like this video, leave a comment down below about anything that I have talked about here, as well as share it where you can. Remember guys, I love you. Stay wet with your tanks. I will see you in the next video.